There are moments in life when conversation becomes more than just an exchange of words. It becomes a test of your awareness, of your center, of your very self. Not every question is a search for truth. Some are snares, subtle attempts to pull you away from your instinct, away from your wholeness, and into the grasp of another's design. At first glance it seems like a simple question, even a concern. But beneath its surface lies something far more insidious. This question doesn't ask, it accuses. It doesn't seek understanding, it imposes judgment. It implies that your reaction, your emotional reality, your truth, is somehow inappropriate, exaggerated, or inconvenient. That you, in essence, are wrong for feeling what you feel. The danger of this question is not in its volume but in its subtlety. It's rarely shouty. It's whispered, tossed casually, with a shrug or a smirk, as though the person saying it is baffled by your depth, by your ability to feel, to respond, to notice. But when someone asks why you're so sensitive, what they're often really saying is, your emotions are making me uncomfortable, and rather than reflect on my actions, I'd prefer to silence your response. Sensitivity is not a flaw, it is not fragility, it is perception, it is the ability to sense nuance, to feel tension, to hear the unsaid. It is a form of emotional intelligence often deeper than language that allows you to know when something is off, even if no one else will admit it. Sensitivity is the antenna of the soul. It picks up on frequencies others ignore, die, or cannot hear, and when it is dismissed, you're being asked not just to numb yourself, but to disconnect from one of your most vital sources of inner truth. When this question is asked repeatedly, especially in close relationships or power dynamics, it becomes something worse. It begins to shape your inner dialogue. You start to question not the situation but yourself. You wonder, am I really overreacting? Was I imagining things? Should I have just stayed quiet? And that's exactly how manipulation works. It doesn't control you by force, it makes you do the work of silencing yourself. Over time, being told you're too sensitive creates a kind of internal split. Part of you continues to feel, to sense, to recognize discomfort or harm. But another part, the one that's been trained to keep the peace, to maintain the connection at any cost, learns to override those signals. You become hyper-vigilant, walking on emotional eggshells, trying to preempt what might trigger criticism. You become less of yourself to remain acceptable to someone else. And in doing so, you start to lose access to your intuition, your boundaries, and your clarity. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if your sensitivity is not the problem, but the very thing that reveals the problem? What if your discomfort is a compass, pointing you toward something that is out of alignment? Not within you, but in the dynamic itself. The question, why are you so sensitive, only arises when someone is unwilling to take responsibility for how their words or actions affect others. Rather than explore the impact they've had, they flip the lens. They put you on trial. Your reaction becomes the issue, not their behavior. It's a psychological sleight of hand, a trick of deflection. And if you're not aware of it, you begin to internalize a story where your feelings are unreliable, inconvenient, or even shameful. So instead of shrinking under the weight of that question, you can begin to hear it differently. Not as an attack on your character, but as a signal that someone may be uncomfortable with accountability. Instead of asking yourself, what's wrong with me? You might ask, why is my reaction making them defensive? What truth have I touched? Because sensitivity at its core is the ability to respond with depth and integrity to the emotional world around you. It is not something you need to fix or hide. It is something you need to trust. It sounds like a simple question, even a plea for reassurance, but it is often anything but innocent. This question, when asked in the context of manipulation, is not an invitation to build closeness. It's a veiled demand for control. It shifts the focus away from the person's actions and turns it onto your loyalty. It carries with it the unspoken implication that a question to hesitate, or to say no, is to betray the relationship itself. And that's where its danger lies. It doesn't seek to understand the reasons behind your caution. It pressures you into surrendering your boundaries in the name of trust. In its most manipulative form, this question is not about earning trust, but about shortcutting the process entirely. Real trust takes time. It is built from consistency, mutual respect, honesty, and accountability. It cannot be demanded, rushed, or used as a lever to gain compliance. Yet when someone says, "Don't you trust me?" in a way that corners you, they're not inviting an honest dialogue about the state of the relationship. They are challenging you to prove your devotion by abandoning your discernment. This is where emotional manipulation becomes especially subtle. The question forces you into a false choice. Either you comply with the other person's wishes, or you risk being seen as disloyal, paranoid, or emotionally closed off. The manipulator reframes your healthy skepticism or cautious instinct as a flaw. Now the issue isn't their behavior, it's your inability to trust. You become the one on the defensive. You are made to explain yourself to justify why you need space, why you have questions, why you feel hesitant. But trust, real trust, does not silence your inner voice, it invites it, it honors it. And anyone who tries to suppress that voice in the name of trust is not asking for connection. They're asking for compliance. This kind of question often appears in situations where power is being unevenly distributed. It's used when someone senses you are starting to pull away, starting to question, starting to think for yourself. By invoking the word, trust, they attempt to trigger guilt to make you second, guess your own emotional intelligence. You begin to feel like you're doing something wrong simply by listening to your own instincts. And this is how control works. Not through outright domination, but through the subtle erosion of your confidence in your own perception over time. If this question is repeated enough, it creates a psychological bind. You begin to associate trust with silence. You equate being a partner, friend, or colleague with being agreeable, with not asking too many questions, with ignoring red flags. You may even start to believe that withholding your thoughts or feelings is a form of love, because that's what the manipulator has conditioned you to accept. But love without honesty is not intimacy. Trust without freedom is not safety. And silence bought through guilt is not peace. When someone uses this question to manipulate, they are often trying to avoid accountability. They don't want to explain themselves, to answer your doubts, or to win your trust through real action. They want immediate absolution. They want you to suspend your judgment, not because they deserve your trust, but because it's easier to control someone who stops asking questions. And that's where the most dangerous kind of trust begins. The kind that asks you to turn away from your own reality. But your ability to trust must begin with yourself. If something feels wrong, if your inner warning system is activated, if your intuition is speaking, those signals are not signs of mistrust, but signs of awareness. When you are asked to suppress those signals for the sake of maintaining a relationship, what you're really being asked to do is betray yourself, and no healthy connection requires that. Trust is not proven by obedience. It is revealed in how someone responds to your boundaries, your questions, your doubts, and your truth. At first, it may seem like a simple question, an expression of surprise or disappointment. But beneath this seemingly casual inquiry lies a powerful attempt to control your behavior, to shape your actions according to someone else's expectations. This question is never truly about the moment or the action itself. It is about enforcing conformity, about pressuring you to fit into a mold that someone else has designed, often for their own comfort or advantage. When someone asks this question, they are inviting you to perform a role, not to be your authentic self. This question carries an unspoken judgment, one that assumes your behavior is inappropriate, immature, or unacceptable. It implies that there is a right way to behave, usually the way that pleases or reassures the other person. And your response falls short of that standard. The goal is to make you feel embarrassed, ashamed, or guilty for expressing yourself as you naturally do. It is a subtle but effective way to exert control, because it attacks your sense of self through the lens of social approval, by asking if you are really going to act a certain way. The manipulator is not simply reacting to your behavior, they are trying to rewrite your identity. They want to dictate how you should appear to the world, what parts of yourself you should hide or suppress, and what emotions you should prioritize or dismiss. This is an attempt to shape your persona, the mask you wear in public, in a way that aligns with their desires rather than your truth. Pressure to conform can be intense, especially when the question comes from someone close or influential in your life, a partner, a family member, a boss, or a friend. You may find yourself doubting your own feelings and reactions, wondering if you are being unreasonable or difficult. The manipulator's question can plant seeds of self-doubt that grow over time, leading you to prioritize others' comfort over your own authenticity. This erosion of self can happen so gradually that you barely notice it and feel disconnected from who you once were. But it is important to remember that discomfort or disagreement does not equal wrongness. Feeling or acting in a way that challenges someone else's expectations is not a failure on your part. Sometimes, it is the very expression of your truth rising to the surface, refusing to be silenced or reshaped. When you are asked if you are really going to act a certain way, you are being tested, not just on your behavior but on your willingness to claim your identity and boundaries. This question also functions as a social weapon. It leverages the power of shame, which is one of the most effective tools of manipulation. Shame convinces you that your natural reactions are embarrassing or unacceptable, that you should hide or correct yourself to gain approval. But shame is an external force imposed from without. it does not come from your true self. Learning to recognize this is crucial to maintaining your inner balance. Manipulative questions like this one create an invisible pressure to conform that can trap you in a cycle of self-censorship. You may begin to edit your behavior before you even act, constantly monitoring yourself to avoid criticism. This kind of hyper-vigilance is exhausting and harmful to your sense of freedom. It undermines your ability to express your full range of emotions and thoughts, cutting you off from the depth of your own humanity. You have the right to act in ways that honor your values and feelings, even if they make others uncomfortable. Authenticity is not about pleasing everyone, it is about being honest with yourself and others, even when it is difficult. When someone questions your behavior with that challenging tone, it is a call to look inward and affirm your right according to your truth. Your actions are not wrong simply because they provoke discomfort or disagreement. In fact, discomfort can be a sign that important boundaries or truths are being recognized. It is a sign that your authenticity is stirring the surface, asking to be seen and respected. The question, are you really going to act like this, is less about you and more about the other person's fear of losing control, their fear of facing a reality that does not bend to their wishes. In standing firm, you reclaim your power, not by escalating conflict, but by embracing your own integrity. The freedom to act as your authentic self is a profound expression of psychological wholeness. It is the courage to live beyond the shadows of expectation and judgment. Moving toward the light of your own becoming on the surface, it sounds like a simple question of curiosity or surprise, but when used manipulatively, it functions as a powerful tool to undermine your confidence and isolate you from your support system. This question doesn't just inquire about information. It seeks to discredit the sources of your knowledge, the foundation of your beliefs, and the connections you rely on. It casts doubt not only on what you know but on who you are as a thinker and a person. When someone asks you this question with a sharp or incredulous tone, they are not interested in learning. Instead, they want to destabilize you. They want to sever the roots that connect you to others who have helped you understand the world, who have validated your feelings or provided you with insight. In essence, they aim to detach you from your anchors, so that you become more dependent on their narrative. Their version of reality. This tactic is often used to control the flow of information in a relationship or environment. By attacking the messenger or the source, the manipulator avoids engaging with the actual content of what you have learned or experienced. They do not want to discuss the facts or the feelings behind your knowledge. Instead, they try to shift the conversation toward suspicion and mistrust, implying that your beliefs are unreliable or invalid, because of where they came from. This question also works by sowing internal doubt. When repeatedly challenged about your sources, you begin to question not just the information but your judgment. You wonder if you have been misled, if your friends or mentors are untrustworthy, or if your own memory and understanding are faulty. This internal questioning can spiral into confusion and anxiety, making it harder to hold on to your truth or stand firm in your convictions. Isolation is one of the most dangerous consequences of this question. When your connections and sources are repeatedly called into question, you may feel compelled to withdraw, to stop sharing your thoughts or seeking advice. The manipulator's goal is often to create a sense of loneliness, where you feel that the only reliable voice is their own. This fosters dependency and makes it easier for then how you think, feel and question. Who even told you that? Also reveals a deeper fear on the part of the manipulator. A fear that you might believe something they cannot control or accept. It exposes their desire to maintain power over your reality, and to prevent you from gaining perspectives that challenge their authority. The question is not about the content of what you know but about the threat your knowledge represents to their influence. When you hear this question, it can be helpful to pause and reflect on the relationship between knowledge and power. Who controls the information? Who benefits from you doubting your sources? Often, this question is less about truth and more about control. Recognizing this can help you respond with clarity instead of confusion or fear. It is also important to remember that knowledge is not static or isolated. The people who have informed you, friends, teachers, family members, books or personal experience, are part of a broader web of understanding. Their insights do not weaken your truth, they enrich it. Questioning the sources without engaging with the substance is a way to avoid facing difficult realities. When faced with this question, standing firm means trusting both your inner knowing and the connections that have nurtured it. It means recognizing that the validity of your perspective is not determined by the approval of one person, but by the coherence and resonance it holds for you. You do not need permission to hold your truth, or to seek knowledge from those who support your growth. In resisting the impulse to shrink or retreat, you reclaim your right to think independently and to maintain your relationships. You protect the integrity of your mind and spirit against attempts to isolate and manipulate you. By valuing your sources and trusting your judgment, you reinforce your foundation against the erosion of doubt. The question, "Who even told you that?" is a challenge, not just to your knowledge but to your autonomy. It calls you to stand in your truth with courage, to honor the voices that have shaped your understanding, and to refuse the narrowing of your world into someone else's version of reality. This question often appears light-hearted, even playful on the surface, but beneath it lies a common and troubling form of manipulation that uses humor as a shield to disguise cruelty, dismissiveness, or disrespect. When someone asks this question in response to your discomfort or hurt feelings, they are often deflecting responsibility and trying to minimize the impact of their words or actions by framing them as harmless fun. It's a way of saying, "Don't take this seriously," when in reality, what was said or done may have crossed a boundary or caused genuine pain. The phrase, "Can't you take a joke?" is often used to silence criticism or objection. It puts you in a difficult position. If you speak up about how something affected you, you risk being labeled as overly sensitive, humorless, or unable to handle life's rough edges. The manipulator uses this question to turn the tables, making your legitimate feelings the problem rather than the behavior that triggered them. It is a classic form of gaslighting, where your reality is denied, and your emotional response is invalidated. Humor is a powerful social tool. It can create connection, ease tension, and foster camaraderie. But when wielded as a weapon, it becomes a means to control, to belittle, and to avoid accountability. The person asking, "Can't you take a joke?" may be testing limits, pushing buttons, or outright masking hostility behind a veil of laughter. This question attempts to normalize disrespect by wrapping it in comedy, suggesting that if you can't laugh along, you are the one out of step or lacking in social grace. The danger in this question is that it blurs the line between harmless teasing and emotional harm. When jokes come at the expense of your dignity, your values, or your sense of safety, they are no longer jokes, they are violations. Yet, the social pressure to appear easygoing, or thick-skinned, can make it difficult to assert your boundaries or voice your discomfort. You may find yourself doubting your own feelings, wondering if you're overreacting or being too serious. This internal conflict weakens your ability to protect yourself and needs effectively, and repeatedly being told that you can't take a joke. When you express discomfort can erode your self-confidence and distort your self-perception. You might start to question whether your boundaries are unreasonable or whether your feelings are valid. Over time, this leads to a kind of emotional confusion, where the line between genuine humor and harmful behavior becomes harder to discern. This confusion benefits the manipulator, who relies on ambiguity and doubt. It's important to recognize that feeling hurt or offended by someone's words or actions is a natural and valid response. Your emotional reactions are part of your internal guidance system, alerting you to what aligns with your values and what violates them. Dismissing those feelings as an inability to take a joke is a way of suppressing your authentic experience. True humor respects boundaries. It does not demand sacrifice of your dignity for the sake of a laugh. When confronted with this question, it can be helpful to pause and reflect on the intent behind the joke and their own feelings. Are you being teased in a way that is playful and mutual? Or is the humor serving to mask hurtful or aggressive behavior? Are your boundaries being respected, or are they being tested and disregarded? Understanding this distinction empowers you to respond with clarity instead of confusion or self-doubt. You do not owe anyone your tolerance for behavior that makes you uncomfortable or disrespects your boundaries. Saying, "No, that's not funny to me," is not an overreaction, it is an assertion of your right to emotional safety. Standing firm in your experience does not make you humorless or difficult. It makes you whole. It is a refusal to let others define your reality for you, or to minimize your feelings in the name of humor. This question also invites you to consider the broader patterns of communication in your relationships. Are there recurring moments when your feelings are dismissed or invalidated through humor? Are your boundaries consistently tested under the guise of just joking? Recognizing these patterns is the first step in reclaiming your voice and setting healthier limits. The question, "Can't you take a joke?" challenges your right to feel safe and respected. It asks you to weigh the cost of laughter against the cost of your dignity. Choosing to honor your feelings and assert your boundaries is an act of courage and self-respect. It is a reminder that humor should never be used as a weapon, but as a bridge toward genuine connection and understanding. So, what do we do with these questions? We notice. We listen, we do not react with fear or anger, but with clarity. The greatest defense against manipulation is not resistance, it is integration. Knowing yourself so deeply that no one else's illusion can replace your truth. Stay alert, not in paranoia but in presence. Let your intuition be your compass. Let your boundaries be your guardians. And let yourself, that eternal center, guide you through every shadow cast upon your path. Because those who seek to control you may speak in questions, but your freedom lies in the answers you already know. Thank you.